It isn't the lights. That's the part everyone expects, the part everyone asks about, the cinematic climax they've been conditioned to anticipate. It's the first question that leaps to their lips when you tell people you went to the edge of Area 51, their eyes wide with a mixture of childlike wonder and morbid curiosity. Did you see the lights? And yes, of course, I saw them. Strange, impossible lights that defied easy explanation, that burned themselves onto the back of my eyelids like a camera flash in a pitch-black room, a permanent retinal scar. But in the quiet, suffocating hours of the night, when sleep refuses to come and the world is still, it's not the lights that I find myself wrestling with. It's not the spectacle that keeps me awake, replaying on a loop. You go to the edge of the world looking for a show. It's the expected climax of the story, the fulfillment of a modern myth, fed by grainy videos and late-night documentaries. You think you're prepared for a strange glow in the sky, for a craft that moves with a silent, impossible grace. You brace yourself for the visual, for the evidence that you can capture with a camera or describe to your friends, the trophy of your pilgrimage. But you are not prepared for what comes after the show is over. Nothing prepares you for the way the place itself feels, for the palpable weight of the atmosphere, for the way it seeps into your bones, and fundamentally rearranges your perception of reality. You go looking for evidence of something else out there, and you come back with terrifying evidence about the world right here. It was the silence that followed the lights. A silence so deep, so absolute, it felt like a physical presence pressing in from all sides. It wasn't the absence of sound. It was the presence of something that actively consumed it. It felt manufactured, like the air itself had been turned into a solid block of acoustic foam, absorbing all sound, all life, all possibility of escape. It was an engineered void, a pocket of dead air in the heart of the Nevada desert, a silence that had teeth, and then a voice came out of that void. A voice that wasn't shouted, that wasn't angry, but was colder and more terrifying than any scream. It was calm, measured, and utterly devoid of humanity, like an eye giving a final, dispassionate report. A voice that spoke my name, a name I had not said aloud, a piece of information I had shared with no one out there in that wasteland. That is the part of the memory I can't explain away with logic or reason. The part that has become a ghost that haunts my waking moments, a permanent fracture in my understanding of the world. It's the part of the story that I've come to understand wasn't a show for me to find, but was a message directed at me all along. The memory doesn't just replay, it ambushes me. It happens when I'm standing in line for coffee or driving to work, and for a split second, the background noise of the world fades into that same crushing silence, and I can almost hear that cold voice again, a perfect, chilling echo in the architecture of my mind. The journey began, as most trips into strange places do, not with a bang, but with a quiet pull. A simple curiosity that festered over years, fueled by hushed late-night radio shows, anonymous internet forums crawling with supposed insiders, and the occasional compelling documentary that managed to cut through the noise of outlandish fiction. It grew from a passing interest into a low-grade, full-blown obsession, a file in the back of my mind that I kept adding clippings to. I was in Las Vegas for a work conference, a city that is itself a carefully constructed illusion on a monumental scale. It's a simulation of joy, a copy of fortune built from buzzing neon, the clatter of cheap plastic chips, and endless recycled air. The constant, frantic chiming of slot machines, a desperate, hollow symphony designed to trigger a dopamine response. The dizzying patterns on the carpets, designed to keep you lost and confused. It all felt more alien to me than anything the desert could possibly hold. I felt a deep, profound need for something real, something that wasn't a fabrication. I wanted something with teeth, something that would bite back. The city felt like a dream someone else was having, and I was just an extra in the background. I needed to wake up. The idea of Area 51 had been a quiet obsession for years, a question mark on the map that I felt pulled toward. Groom Lake. Dreamland, a place so secret, the U.S. government refused to officially admit it existed until a Freedom of Information Act request finally forced their hand in 2013. For decades, it was a ghost in their own machine, a place they pretended wasn't there, despite it being one of the worst-kept secrets in the world. The official story, the one you can now find in declassified documents, is that it's a remote testing facility for advanced aviation projects. A place where they built incredible, history-altering machines like the U-2 spy plane and the F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighter. It's a neat, logical, and believable explanation. It's also the perfect cover story, a boring wall of text made to be so bland that no one would ever feel the need to question it. Because the other stories, the ones that bubble up from the desert itself like heat shimmer, are far more interesting. Stories of recovered craft from other worlds, of technology reverse-engineered from them that shattered our understanding of physics. Stories whispered by men like Bob Lazar, who in 1989 claimed he was a physicist tasked with understanding alien propulsion systems at a hidden facility called S4, south of the main Groom Lake base. He spoke of a craft powered by a gravity wave reactor, fueled by a stable isotope of a super-heavy element called Element 115. I wasn't a total believer, but I wasn't a hardened skeptic either. I was auditing the mystery. I had read the dismissals, the articles debunking his education, the official denials from government labs. I had also seen the old phone book that seemed to place him right where he said he was. I wanted to stand at the edge of that secret world, that forbidden kingdom, and see if anything stared back. I had to know if the feeling of being watched, which so many visitors reported, was just paranoia born of isolation or something more tangible. So I filled the tank of a rental car with gas, bought a ridiculous amount of water and beef jerky at a 24-hour convenience store, and pointed the car north on Interstate 15. The neon glow of the Las Vegas simulation, a city that prides itself on never sleeping, slowly shrank in my rearview mirror until it was just another indistinct cluster of stars in a sea of encroaching blackness. The drive on Route 93 is a lesson in calculated emptiness. The neat manicured suburbs with their identical terracotta roofs eventually give way to raw, untamed scrub brush and jagged rock formations that look like the planet's exposed bones. The highway narrows from 4 lanes to 2, a silent suggestion that you are leaving the structured, predictable world behind. The radio stations, one by one, betray you, fading into a chaotic chorus of static until the only sounds left are the low hum of tires on asphalt and the increasingly frantic sound of your own breathing. You begin to feel the scale of the world change out there. You feel small, insignificant, a single, vulnerable dot crawling across an empty canvas under a sky bigger and darker than you've ever truly seen. Every set of headlights that appears in the distance behind you feels like a potential tail, a government sedan sent to track you, only to reveal itself as a lone trucker before disappearing again into the night, leaving you even more alone than before. Then comes the moment you have to commit, the point of no return. A small green sign for a place called Crystal Springs and a turnoff for State Route 375. This is the turn. This is where the pilgrimage truly begins. Nevada, in a brilliant move of opportunistic branding, officially named this 98-mile stretch of road the Extraterrestrial Highway in 1996. The green sign that marks it is like a monument, a holy site for UFO pilgrims, absolutely covered in the stickers and graffiti of all those who came before me. 1,000 voices all saying, I was here. As I got out of the car to take the required photograph, the silence already felt different. It wasn't just quiet. It was heavy, like a thick blanket smothering the world. The only sound was the faint metallic ticking of the car's engine as it cooled down in the chilly desert air, a sound that seemed inappropriately loud in the stillness. I felt like I was crossing an invisible line, not just from one road to another, but from the world of known rules into the heart of a modern myth. The highway itself is hypnotic, a straight, black ribbon cutting through an endless moonlit valley nestled between unseen mountain ranges. For miles and miles, there is nothing. No cell service, no houses, no signs of life, nothing but the endless expanse. The flat, empty landscape is a canvas, and your imagination, now completely unchecked by the distractions of civilization, starts to paint pictures on it. Every flash of sun on a distant rock could be an observation post. Every dust devil spinning in the distance could be a patrol vehicle kicking up dust. The isolation is a palpable force, a form of sensory deprivation that heightens every other feeling. I was driving into a blank spot on the map, a place where the ordinary rules of the world felt like they were suspended. The sun began to set, painting the sky in incredible, violent shades of orange and purple, and the mountains cast long, dark shadows that stretched across the valley like skeletal fingers. The feeling was undeniable. I was no longer just a curious visitor. I was on their turf now. You can't make this journey without a stop in Rachel, Nevada. To call it a town is generous. It's a tiny, dusty collection of trailers and prefabricated buildings with a population of about 50 hardy souls, the closest outpost of humanity to the edge of the base. At its heart is the world-famous Little Aileen. Pulling into the gravel parking lot feels like arriving at a strange, surreal oasis in the middle of nowhere. A tow truck with a cartoonish flying saucer chained to its bed sits out front as a permanent greeter, a testament to the town's unique identity. The whole place is a shrine to the mythology of Area 51. The walls inside are covered with a dense collage of supposed UFO photos, yellowed newspaper clippings about strange sightings, signed headshots from actors in science fiction shows, and dollar bills tacked to the ceiling by previous visitors. It's part bar, part motel, and part museum to the big, beautiful question of this place. I ordered an alien burger and a beer and sat at the bar, letting my eyes adjust to the dim light. You don't come here for gourmet food. You come here to listen, to soak in the atmosphere and feel the personality of the place. I started talking to the woman behind the bar. She had a tired but knowing look in her eyes, the kind of look you get from answering the same questions 1,000 times from tourists just like me. I decided to try a different approach. I didn't ask her if she'd seen a UFO. It felt too simple, too blunt, a question she'd be tired of hearing. Instead, I asked her about the strangest thing she'd ever heard out here in the middle of nowhere. She polished a glass, her eyes fixed on the darkening desert outside the window. "It's not what you hear," she said, her voice low and even. "It's what you don't hear." She told me about the sonic booms from experimental planes that would rattle the windows in the middle of the night, loud enough to knock pictures off the wall. But she also told me about the nights of absolute, unnatural silence. She talked about the lights. Some were obviously military flares, predictable and bright. Others were clearly jets from nearby Nellis Air Force Base, following normal, understandable flight paths. But some were different. They would just hang in the sky, silent. Then they would make impossible, instantaneous right-angle turns, moves that no normal aircraft could make. And then they would just vanish, as if they were never there. Then she leaned in a little closer, and her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "You know the Lazar story, right?" "Of course. You can't research this place without tripping over the name Bob Lazar." In 1989, he came forward in a series of televised interviews, claiming to be a physicist who worked at a secret facility called S4, located near Area 51's Groom Lake. He said his job was to reverse engineer the propulsion systems of captured alien spaceships, which were powered by a super heavy, stable element called Element 115. His story was dissected, debated, and for the most part, officially debunked. His claimed university degrees, couldn't be verified, and Los Alamos National Labs denied he ever worked there, though a 1982 phone book seemed to list his name among their scientists. His story had holes, and yet his testimony was the spark that lit the modern Area 51 firestorm. He gave the mystery a narrative. He gave the ghost a name. "A lot of folks round here think he was telling a version of the truth," the bartender said, still not looking at me. "Maybe he got some details wrong, or maybe they were details he was told to get wrong. A disinformation campaign to hide something even stranger. But the heart of it, that something that could change the world is happening just over that ridge. We feel it. It's in the air." She told me about the surveillance, the constant, unspoken understanding that you are always being watched, even when you're on public land. She mentioned motion sensors buried in the roads, long-range cameras on the peaks, and the infamous camo dudes, private security contractors in four-wheel drive trucks who sit on hilltops just watching, always watching. They know you're coming long before you see the first warning sign. As I paid my bill and got ready to leave, she gave me one last piece of advice, her eyes finally meeting mine, and the casual, tired demeanor was gone, replaced by something serious and almost motherly. "Go see the border. It's your right, but be respectful. They don't have a sense of humor out there. Don't point your camera at the security, and don't get cute. And whatever you do, don't cross the line." Coming from her, that warning felt more real and more serious than any government sign ever could. I walked out into the cool, crisp desert air. The stars were coming out with a brilliant, almost violent clarity. The feeling of being watched was no longer a paranoid fantasy. It was a confirmed fact of this place, and I was driving right towards the watchers. Leaving the dim, friendly lights of the inn behind me, I turned onto Groom Lake Road. It's just an unmarked dirt path leading off the highway into total, absolute darkness. This isn't a road you take by accident. You have to be looking for it. The gravel crunched loudly under the tires, an unsettling rhythm in the vast, empty silence. My headlights cut a sharp, narrow tunnel through the night, revealing nothing but dust and skeletal scrub brush for miles. The confidence I'd felt back in Vegas, the bravado of an adventurer, was completely gone, replaced by a raw, gut-level nervousness that sat cold and heavy in my stomach. After about 20 minutes of driving slowly, cautiously, my headlights finally caught them. A series of simple orange posts hammered into the ground, marking the infamous perimeter. And next to them, the signs. Seeing them in person is a completely different experience from seeing them in photographs. The stark, black, official-looking letters on a plain white background are chillingly mundane. One read, "Warning Restricted Area," and went on to state, "It is unlawful to enter this area without permission of the installation commander," citing federal law. Another was more blunt, "Photography prohibited." And then the one that truly makes the hair on your arms stand up, "Use of deadly force authorized." It's not just a warning. It's a statement of absolute rules. A promise of what could happen if you take one step too far. I stopped the car 100 yards from the line of orange posts and killed the engine. The silence that rushed in was so complete it felt like a physical weight pressing on my eardrums. I got out of the car, my movements slow and deliberate, trying not to make any sudden sounds, as if I were in the presence of a sleeping predator. Above me, the Milky Way was a brilliant, shimmering slash across the perfectly black sky, more vivid than I had ever seen. The incredible beauty of it was completely ruined by a deep and pervasive sense of menace. The feeling of being watched was now overwhelming, a physical prickling on the back of my neck. I scanned the dark ridges of the mountains on either side of the valley with my binoculars. And then I saw it, a single stationary point of light on a hill to my right. It wasn't a star. Through my binoculars, the light resolved into the faint cabin glow of a white pickup truck parked silently on the ridgeline. The camo dudes. The guardians of the gate. I couldn't see the men inside, just the dark, menacing outline of their vehicle against the star-dusted sky. But I knew they were there. I knew with absolute certainty they were looking right at me, probably through night vision or thermal optics far more powerful than my cheap binoculars. They sit there for hours, for their entire shift, a constant, intimidating presence. My entire journey down this lonely dirt road had been tracked. I was just a blip on a screen somewhere, an object of interest being watched, analyzed, and evaluated. The bartender was right. They knew I was here long before I arrived. This is the point where everything changed forever. As I stood there, caught in that silent, unnerving standoff with the unseen watchers on the hill, I looked up at the sky one last time. I saw a light, high up, moving at a steady, silent pace. A satellite, I tried to tell myself. A normal, explainable thing. Then another light appeared, and then a third, and they were all moving in a perfect parallel formation. Military aircraft on maneuvers, I told myself next, my brain desperately trying to fit the data into a box I understood. Then they stopped. All three of them. Just stopped dead in the sky. My breath caught in my throat. My mind screamed at me. Planes don't stop. Satellites don't stop. They were arranged in a perfect equilateral triangle. And as my eyes adjusted to the dark, I could almost see a shape connecting them. A huge, black, solid craft. So dark, it looked like a hole had been punched in the starfield. It was literally blotting out the stars behind it, a void in the heavens, and the silence. The silence was the most terrifying part. An object that large, that close, should have been making a deafening roar, a deep hum, some kind of noise. But there was nothing. Absolute, profound, crushing nothing. It felt like a glitch in reality, like my eyes and ears were fundamentally disagreeing on what was real. It hung there for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only 30 seconds. Then, it didn't accelerate or fly away. It simply stopped being in that spot and instantly reappeared miles to the east. One moment it was there, the next it was just over there. The movement wasn't movement. It was a relocation. A jump. It hovered in its new position for another moment, and then the three lights blinked out, one by one, into nothingness. It was gone. I was frozen solid, my heart hammering against my ribs, so hard I could feel the pulse in my ears, drowning out the world. It was a fundamental, reality-breaking experience. I had seen something that my brain insisted was impossible. And that's when I heard the distinct crunch of gravel on the ground right behind me. I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. Two men were standing there, not 20 feet away. They had not been there a second ago. I hadn't heard a car. No headlights had flashed. I hadn't heard a single footstep in the gravel before that one deliberate sound. They had simply appeared. They were both tall and powerfully built, dressed in pristine, clean camouflage uniforms with no flags, no names, no insignia of any kind. Their faces were completely blank, devoid of any discernible emotion or expression. The camo dudes, no longer on a distant hill, but right here. "You're a long way from home," one of them said. His voice was flat, cold, not a question, but a statement of fact. "I was just looking at the stars," I stammered, my own voice sounding thin and weak in the oppressive quiet. "I'm leaving now." "We know," the other one said, his eyes never blinking. They both took a slow, deliberate step closer in perfect unison, and their presence was more intimidating than any weapon they could have been holding. "I saw the signs," I said, my voice shaking as I started backing away toward the perceived safety of my car. "I didn't cross the line. I respect the boundary. I'm going." My hand finally touched the cold metal of the car door handle. The man on the right took one more step forward, closing the distance between us until I could feel an almost static charge in the air. And then he spoke the words that made my entire reality collapse in on itself. He said my name, my full name, first, middle, and last. It is time for you to leave now. First name, middle name, last name. Time stopped. A wave of ice-cold dread washed over me, so intense it felt physical, like my blood had turned to slush. How? How was that possible? My driver's license was in my wallet, inside my pocket. My phone had been turned off for hours to save battery. My rental agreement was in the glove box. There was no possible, conventional way for him to know who I was. The surveillance wasn't just cameras and binoculars. It was total. They hadn't just been watching me drive down a road. They knew who was in the car before I even got there. The entire encounter suddenly felt scripted, like a small, terrifying play put on just for me. It was a demonstration. It was a message. We see everything. We know everything. Your identity is just a file we can open whenever we want. I didn't say another word. I couldn't. My ability to form thoughts, let alone sentences, had evaporated. I scrambled into the driver's seat, my hands shaking so badly it took me 3 tries to get the key into the ignition. My fingers felt like clumsy, foreign objects. I slammed the car into drive and hit the gas, kicking up a rooster tail of dust and gravel. I fled, not daring to look in the rearview mirror, not wanting to see if they were still standing there, or if they had vanished as silently as they had appeared. I was escaping the impossible craft in the sky and the men who knew my name in the dark. The drive back to the paved highway was a complete blur of terror. My mind was a chaotic storm, racing, desperately trying to process what had just happened, to put it into some kind of logical framework that wouldn't shatter my sanity. How did they know my name? My brain cycled through possibilities, each one more frightening than the last. A license plate scanner that was instantly cross-referenced with my rental car agreement from Las Vegas? Advanced, but maybe possible. A rogue signal grab from my powered-off phone? A Stingray device that mimics a cell tower and forces a connection, pulling my data? Perhaps, but the calm, matter-of-fact way he said it felt deeper than that. It wasn't the tone of someone reading a file. It was the tone of someone who already knew. It felt like a calculated display of power, a psychological tool designed to ensure I never came back and to make sure that the story I told would serve as its own kind of warning to others. They weren't just guarding a piece of land. They were guarding a secret by weaponizing reality itself. When my tires finally hit the paved extraterrestrial highway, the feeling of relief was so powerful, it almost made me sick. I pulled over and gasped for air, my body trembling uncontrollably. I had gone looking for a mystery, for a thrill, and had instead found a terrifying truth, that we all live our lives in a comfortable little bubble of what we think is privacy and freedom. In that one moment, by that orange line in the desert, that entire illusion was shattered for me. I was shown, in the clearest and most terrifying way possible, that there are levels of knowledge and power at play in the world, so far beyond our understanding, they might as well be magic. I felt like a child who had peeked behind the curtain of a magic show and seen not levers and pulleys, but a genuine and terrifying God pulling the strings. I finally made it back to Las Vegas as the sun was rising, painting the sky pink and orange over the mountains. The neon lights of the casinos, which had felt so alien and fake just the day before, now felt like a comforting blanket. A familiar, human kind of fake that I could understand. I checked into a different hotel, paid in cash, and spent the next day in a daze, jumping at every unexpected sound. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that impossible black triangle against the stars, and the cold, empty face of a man who held my identity in his hands as easily as if he were holding a driver's license. I've replayed that night in my mind 1,000 times, trying to build a logical box to put it in, to shrink it down to something manageable. The craft could have been a top-secret military drone, perhaps a next-generation stealth reconnaissance platform, something beyond current public knowledge. The men could have used some kind of advanced but conventional technology to identify me as a show of force. That is the rational explanation, the one that lets me sleep sometimes. But I can't shake the chilling, bone-deep feeling that the experience wasn't random. It was controlled. It felt less like a chance encounter and more like a message being delivered specifically to me. The timing of the craft's appearance, the sudden arrival of the men, the impossible knowledge they possessed, it all felt too precise, too theatrical to be a coincidence. So, what do you think happened out there in the desert? Was I the chosen audience for a demonstration of next-generation military technology? A psychological operation designed to protect the nation's biggest secrets with fear instead of fences? Or did I stumble into something else entirely? A place protected by forces whose abilities we can't even begin to measure? A place where the line between advanced technology and the paranormal simply ceases to exist? Have you ever experienced something you couldn't explain? Let me know your theories and ideas in the comments below. All I know for sure is that I'm left with the echoes of that night, with the memory of that profound, deafening silence, and the chilling certainty that we are not alone in the desert. And you never, ever know who or what is watching you back from the dark.